We've all experienced someone overreacting, whether it's been in the boardroom where someone disagrees with a decision that's been made and they fly off the handle, or if you've had to have a developmental conversation with somebody who just can't quite hear what you're trying to say to them through all their emotional head noise. Or if you're being honest, you might have a situation that time and time again, you know you get overly provoked and you end up rising to it and just acting like a child. Now, one of the worst things that you can ever do when someone has overreacted is to write them off. And sadly, I see this happen in organisations all the time. You hear conversations like, let's keep this away from them because they will not be able to handle it. And of course, that causes damage to relationships, and it stops people's potential, and it stops your organisation from moving forward. So I want to share an insight as to what might be going on when someone overreacts. Now, to understand your character or your personality, it's worth noting that there are lots of elements at play that make up you. You're not one box with a description that can be ticked, when in fact there are lots of things at play that make up your personality or your character. So, for example, there is how you hold emotions. Now, how you hold the attachment emotions like love, trust, joy, and excitement, and how you hold the survival emotions like fear, sadness, disgust, guilt, and shame. That is a big element as to what makes you you. There's also this idea called subpersonalities. Subpersonalities is the theory that you are made up of lots of different kind of characters. And depending on the circumstance or context, those subpersonalities will come out more or less. So for example, there might be part of you that is an adventurer, and part of you that's a raver who loves a party, and part of you who's a really responsible parent, and part of you who's just lazy and wants to lie around watching films all day. And depending on the situation you find yourself in, some of these subpersonalities will come out more or less. And your strengths and your weaknesses. So of course this is an overly simplified model, but it points towards the fact that there's lots of elements that go towards making you up. Now, let's say in theory you have a 40-year-old. Over their 40 years, all of these elements of their character will have grown up and matured at different rates depending on their experiences. So it might look something like this. So as you see, there'll be certain conversations or situations where you're actually dealing with the most mature part of their character, where you're benefiting from all the 40 years worth of development and growing. But there will be other elements of their character that when you come into contact with, you're actually handling a part of them that is less mature or developed. And this is what happens in organisations and in relationships and in families all the time. People come into contact with a part of someone's personality that is less developed. So in this theoretical example, this 40-year-old, you can see that sadness is down here at sort of 3 years old. So in theory, this could be somebody who at the age of 3 expressed sadness, and that sadness was shut down. And so what they learn is, well, my sadness isn't welcome in the world. And so they grow up hiding their sadness from the world. Which means that when that sadness does come out, it doesn't come out with all the maturity of some of the other aspects of their character. It comes out with the immaturity of when the growth stopped. So that's why you might find someone overreacting and they seem really childish, because you're actually handling a part of their personality that hasn't yet developed. So 2 applications. First application is, if you are dealing with someone who seems to overreact, then take a step back and think, is there a part of their personality that is being called up in this situation where they actually are trying to work out how to express that better in the world? And could you be more patient with them? Now, it's not about being patronising. It's not about turning around to your colleagues and saying, I realise I'm handling the 5-year-old part of you, because that's probably not going to go down very well. But it is about just taking a step back and maybe even taking responsibility for saying, could I communicate this in a different way? Could I handle this situation in a way that would be more kind, instead of just writing them off? And secondly, if there are situations where you know you keep getting provoked, maybe use this model as an idea to say, is there a part of my character that's getting called up here that, if I'm being honest, is less mature than some other parts of my character? So for me personally, I know that I'm not very good at expressing shame. So when it comes to developmental feedback, I can sometimes act like a wee stubborn 5-year-old because I don't want to express the fact that I feel shameful. I don't want to express the fact that I feel like I've done something wrong when I get the developmental feedback. So my growth is coming just now as I'm trying to learn how to express that shame better into the world. And I'd say the vast majority of coaching that I do with my clients is about uncovering what aspects of their personality they've kept hidden or hasn't had the opportunity to grow yet, and about finding the gold that's in that and allowing that to come up and grow up with the rest of their characters. So what part of your character have you perhaps hidden away from the rest of the world that hasn't become as mature? Or where are you handling that with somebody else, and where could you be a bit more kind?